Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we are going to be talking with three fabulous women, Jami, Adenah, and Shirin. I'd love to welcome the three of you to turn your cameras on and join me up on this virtual stage. As you're doing and navigating that, I do want to just mention to the audience, for those of you that are just joining us, welcome. We have an amazing panel in store for you titled Learning to Grow, Think Big, Act Local. And we're going to talk about not only how to grow, but how do you do so in a way that doesn't jeopardize the authenticity of you, your brand, and your business. To my audience, please throw your questions in the Q&A chat, and myself and the Yelp team will navigate. And I'll make sure I leave some time at the end for Q&A. So to start us off, hello ladies, to start us off, I would love for each of you to just talk for a minute or two, tell everyone who you are, what you're all about, and what your story is. I'd love to start with you, Jami, then we'll go Shirin and Adenah.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Allie, and hello to everyone, all you awesome ladies out there tuning in. My name is Jami Stigliano. I'm the founder and CEO of DivaDance. We change lives by inspiring confidence and building community through dance choreography classes for adults. So we are a franchise model. I have 22 franchises across the country, but I started it as my hobby business living in New York City. I went to a dance class at a kind of professional leaning studio in New York just for fun, and I had no fun. I walked out of there feeling stressed and deflated confidence, and I said, you know what, I'm going to teach my own classes. So that was many years ago, and now 5 years ago, we decided to franchise and bring this around the country and empower women to start their own business and bring this into their communities. So that's a little bit about DivaDance.
I love that. And I'm a personal huge fan of DivaDance. We've worked together on so many different occasions. So Shirin, I'd love to turn it over to you. Tell us who you are and your story.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. And I'm told Jami and I'll sign up for her DivaDance classes soon. My name is Shirin Behzadi. Thanks for having me. I was the CEO of Home Franchise Concepts. I was in franchising, have been in franchising for over 20 years. But I started as an immigrant when I was 17 years old working at a gas station. I know what it takes to build something from the ground up. When it comes to franchising, I was fortunate enough to be involved with multiple brands. Some we started from the ground up, others we acquired at a later stage. I've been involved with private equity on the buying and the selling side. I'm fortunate enough to be on multiple boards of franchise systems and advise other franchisors. I'm just generally passionate about helping people to find financial success and personal joy, even if they are facing adversity. And I'm specifically passionate about this space, the franchising space, because there's so much opportunity for people to do. So I'm here to be as helpful as I possibly can. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And Adenah, over to you.
Hi. How can I follow you guys? Such hard acts. My name is Adenah. I am a franchisee. I started in this business, I want to say 15 years ago. But really, I started in the restaurant space when I was 8 years old in my grandmother's restaurant in Africa. I have 4 open IHOP right now. I've been with the system for about 15 years. I have about 7 stores. I just started my own concept called Cornbread, farm to soul. We have 4 locations open right now. And I really got in this space to have an impact in the communities that I do business in. I tend to really be focused in marginalized communities, community of color, and how I can be impactful in doing some real meaningful work through franchises. I think I love this space because I think you already come into a proven system, but being partnered with a franchise such as IHOP have allowed me to use their global name to really have meaningful impact in the spaces that I occupy and touch lives and make this landscape very, very beautiful without pancakes. So that's it.
I love it. I love it. Adenah, I'm going to stay with you here for a second for this next question. What does authenticity mean to you? And how do you make sure as a franchisee, as well as having your hands, very full with other businesses that you're scaling and projects, how do you make sure you're staying authentic?
I think I would answer that question truthfully is you have to show up. You have to show up every day and be present and understand your why. I think when you know the reason why you're doing things, I think if you understand the reason why you're waking up every day out of bed, it allows you to be extremely authentic in a way that's unmeasurable, right? So for me, I stay very authentic by staying very close to the issues that are meaningful to me. Empowering women, particularly Black and brown women, right? Staying close to the issues, like right now, shutting down my IHOP this week to host a vaccination workshop and to work with the Rockefeller Foundation to get people in the community of color to get vaccinated. Because we all know the statistics are speaking horrible numbers to us. So I got vaccinated in front of a television crew. Those are the reasons. That's how I stay authentic, because those are the meaningful impact. I'm thinking I'm having a vaccination event yesterday. We end up vaccinating close to 500 people. To me, that's authenticity in this rawness, right? So being present, knowing why you're doing the things that you're doing is an easy way to stay very authentic and present where you're doing.
Absolutely. I love that. Being present. It sounds simple, but it's hard to stay present and to actively stay present. Jami, I want to ask you a similar question. You really scaled the DivaDance brand, and it's so impressive. DivaDance is in a lot of different cities, owned by a number of women. So where does authenticity sit with you, and how do company values come into play? That'll be kind of like part one. And then would also even love to hear about like the control aspect of it. How can you make sure that branding is on point, but at the same time, give up some control so that there's authenticity within each franchise?
Sure. So for us, we wear our values loud and proud out at the forefront of the company. We're about inspiring confidence and building community. And that's at every level of the company. So it's not just we want our clients to come in and feel good. My franchisees, I take that seriously in my relationship with them. It's how we treat each other on my HQ, my corporate team as well. And it really comes down for us about being in the people business. So we're not in the dance class business. We're in the people business. I think that's something that me and the ladies really align on in terms of how we run our companies, is we're really about people. So you can stay authentic if you actually really care about people. So that makes it a lot easier. And in terms of the control part of it, Ali, it's really about culture. So, I know from the franchising industry, it does have a little bit of a reputation for being, the franchisor is trying to control you and, trying to have, a heavy hand on their franchisees. We have created a culture that's just not like that. It is, all of our owners, we're about in the culture of empowering them, giving them the tools that they need. They know that my job is to keep the brand strong. So we do have, some guidelines about how the brand is used and the logo and things of that nature, but that's just to protect their investment. A franchise is an investment. So, my job is to keep the brand strong and keep the way the brand is presented as highly regarded as possible. So rather than having a control kind of culture, we have, an abundance, and we all want to lift each other up and succeed. So it really comes down to culture. And if you have a strong relationship with your franchisees, it will not be perceived as controlling. It'll be perceived as, the best for the brand, for all of us.
Totally. So being a resource rather than kind of like a strong hand. I love that. Shirin, I would love to hear from you. You have so much experience when it comes to advising businesses on growth and authenticity. What's your advice or really your secret sauce, opinions on making a national brand feel local?
Very good question, and thanks for calling it a secret sauce, because that's what I've been saying. It always starts with having a true guiding principle. What is the true north for you as an organization? And for us has always been, and I believe any good franchisor should keep this in mind, to making sure that franchisees are thriving. You're in the franchise business. You decided to become a franchisor because ultimately, obviously, you want to be good citizens of your communities. You want to make sure that you give back. You want to make sure the product and services that you offer are useful and helpful to the communities that you live in. And your job is making sure that your franchisees are well-trained, well-educated, well-supported. Every decision that's made, every project that's taken on, every initiative that you decide to roll out will always have to bounce off. Is this the right thing to do for our franchisees? Is it going to make them more financially successful? Is it going to give them what they're looking for? Is it going to give them a better work-life balance? Whatever those goals are, you have to be true to the true north. I loved what Jami and Adenah both said. It's you have to be authentic with your purpose. You as a franchisor, you as a leader of an organization has to be you have to be very, very clear. What is it that you want to do in the world? And in the world of franchising, it's your job to making sure franchisees are well positioned. So going back to the local, and if you think about it, we started from the ground up, multiple brands that were very small, and by end of 2019, we're 1,700 franchises strong in 11,000 cities. So how do you keep your sense of local presence while you're growing? It's all about empowering franchisees. So again, staying with your true north. Franchisees thrive by being good citizens of their local community. They are the best source of information as to what their communities are looking for. Be engaged, be involved, get to know your neighbors, because people buy from people they like. And so the flavor of local remains because that's the emphasis. That's the genesis of the company as a whole. The national and the international umbrella brand only comes into support. It comes in to collect good information franchisees to be able to put together programs, tools, services to be able to give them more in their local areas to make it more successful.
I love that, having your true North Star. And like Jami, you were saying, making sure that you have those values and that the franchisor is acting as a resource and someone that the franchisees can lean on. It's so important. Shirin, I'd love to stick with you here and talk a little bit about the when folks are thinking about growing, whether that's their franchise business or even just adding on units or other locations with brick and mortar businesses. It's a hard question to answer when, because of course it's dependent on so many factors. But what's kind of your general advice as far as what to look at to know when you're ready to add more locations or to start a franchise?
You're so spot on. The when is the toughest thing, right? When do you ever take on a new project? When do you decide to be an entrepreneur? When do you decide to grow? It's when it's starting to feel like you can. That's the number one indicator. But I also think if you're deciding to become a franchisor or you're deciding to add on units, you have to ask yourself this question. Have I created a good enough system that I can hand it off to someone else and make them successful? That's the essence of franchising, right? A true tested system that can be duplicated over and over. So I would say, in my mind, I would think of someone and I would say, Susan, can I just hand this off to Susan? Have I systematized what I do well enough to be able to train her and make sure that she's successful at it? So you've got to make sure that you understand your numbers. You've got to make sure that you understand how to generate leads, how to provide services, how do you package it all together from soup to nuts so that you can hand it off to someone else.
Thank you so much. Jami, I want to ask you, what do you feel separates some of your franchisees as far as some of the more successful locations? What do you see as far as maybe the person managing it? And what are some factors that come into play, maybe that are even the uncontrollable factors?
Sure. Well, people are always the most uncontrollable, right? And so, even though to Shirin's point, you can give them all the tools and you can empower them and you can give them the right training, but you're still relying on them to put in the work. It's still hard work, even though you are investing in a franchise that has a proven system, has a known brand, you have a support system. The franchisee has to do the work. They have to, as Adenah said, they have to show up every day. They have to put in the work. So even though it's again a franchise and it's turnkey in theory, you have to on the local level put that work in. And then the other big factor is the people on their teams, right? So for DivaDance, we're not brick and mortar. We bring our classes into existing spaces, rec centers, gyms, existing dance studios. During COVID, a lot of outdoor spaces. Obviously, we're still in COVID, but over the last year, we've expanded to outdoor basketball courts and things of that nature. So for me, an additional challenge is working with a very part-time staff. So the local franchisees having to really build a glued together team of folks who really are only doing this very, very part-time for manicure money or Uber money or Venmo money. So that is always, people are your biggest variable. But if you can continue to invest in people and we really coach our owners how to build culture with their local teams and how to build community amongst those folks, even though they are very part-time, we try to give them as many tools to do that and encouragement to do that. But that people make all the difference in that variable.
All great points. I just want to draw attention for the audience to drop some questions. In about 15 minutes, we'll transition to audience Q&A. I can already see them pouring in, but I want to highlight that, and we'll make sure that these three fabulous women get to it. Adenah, I would love to ask you your experience as a franchisee and the connectors and how it relates to what you're building and working on now. So the inspiration and where that fell, and then talk to us about what you're building.
I think I sort of came into this space with a very open mind. And I was fortunate enough to be connected with a franchise system that allowed me to really be myself. If I was to look back, I want to say IHOP allowed me to be myself. They gave me the room to really think locally. They allow me to have this big brand, but really make decisions locally. And they allow me to be their eyes on the ground. They allow me to be the face of the brand in my community. Literally, I was known as the IHOP lady, in my community. I would go in the grocery store and someone is standing next to me. Aren't you the girl from IHOP? So I think alignment is extremely important. So I learned that from a very start, that I was very aligned with a brand that wanted my growth, that wasn't afraid to have the honest conversation in how do you really do business in brown and brown communities, because it's not one size kind of fit all kind of a thing. And I think franchise systems have to recognize that. And I know my reason why I'm at the table. I represent a group of people that are underrepresented in the franchise system. And I always want to bring voice to those people, right? So the inspiration that I sort of take from IHOP as I'm creating this brand that I'm franchising is to be just that. I think you have to think in a granular sense, think very globally, but you can't forget those communities that makes, truly, if you really think about, honestly, franchising is really selling the brand and the system. The corporation have done that for you. But how do you get in contact with really these micro entrepreneurs, such as myself, that bring that brand and those systems to life? That is when the success of a brand really come to life. Is when you have a franchisee such as myself that becomes successful. So for me, as I build something, I want to take some page out of IHOP and allow my franchisee the room to really be their self, to really guide them in an honest way that lead to what we just talk about, profitability, but also alignment to values. So I think for me, that's the inspiration I want to take, that me and IHOP were extremely aligned. We are still aligned. I have immensely enjoyed my time at IHOP. I'm having so much fun so much fun that I can never stop doing this. I want to pass that to someone else.
I love your emphasis on thinking locally. That's wonderful. Shirin, I would love to turn it over to you. What are some unexpected things that people might not think about when it comes to franchising?
Oh gosh, there's so much. Franchising is very powerful because it takes a local franchise owner that understands their community and brings in support, kind of like what Adenah was saying, support from the headquarters. But it can also be very challenging because as a franchisor, somebody has brought in their hard-earned dollars, invested it with you, and is looking to you to provide them with the right support, with the right mechanisms, with the right systems. So what I've experienced, having worked with franchises that were on the ground floor and then grow, and then some didn't grow, is that there are some common pitfalls. So beyond what we can talk about today, if anybody's ready to get into the franchising, I would strongly recommend that you do your research. Some of the common pitfalls are you don't know your own way of making money well enough yet. So you need to really know your numbers. What would be a lead? How could you close a lead to a sale? What is your product offering? How expansive would it be? What is the market size? What's your competition? You need to know all of those well, because based on those values, you are creating territory sizes. What I've seen with a lot of new franchise systems is that they give away a lot. And the problem with that is that could actually backfire to the success of the franchise owner because they need to be able to zoom in into what works. Plus, in franchising wins if you have many franchises neighboring each other because that raises the volume and brand recognition. When you give away such huge territories, then that's not quite possible. Some of the other pitfalls, and I'm not going to belabor this because I can sit here and talk for a whole day about what could be a pitfall, is not knowing how to sell your franchise. Like, how do you get someone to be interested in buying a franchise from you? How do you put together an agreement? Because it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, whatever you choose it to be. It's a long-term relationship with someone. How do you organize around that so that you've thought it well enough through ahead of time? How do you price your model? What is the initial investment that you expect of a franchise owner? What's the ongoing investment that you need from them? And you as a franchisor would have a lot of costs, right? You have to put together an agreement, a franchise disclosure document, training programs. Do you have enough funding to be able to do all of those things well? Those are some of the highlights. But again, franchising could be amazing, but it could also be very, very risky. So make sure that you really understand it well.
Absolutely. Jami, I want to ask you a similar question about what are some things that have come up with you and DivaDance that have been, unexpected as it pertains to franchising?
Well, I was very fortunate to have an incredible mentor who had been in franchising for 40 years. So if you make sure you really have a trusted advisor. I know everyone on this call, we'd be happy to, be resources to folks, when you're getting started. But having a trusted advisor is so critical because there's things. His name is Chuck. He actually recently passed away, very sadly, but he was in franchising until he lived a good long life. So, but when he was alive, he really, there's things he told us at the beginning of the process. Shirin makes a great point about territory. That's a big one, right? And that we were kind of like, I don't know.
Jami, I think we actually lost you on sound here.
You got me? Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. My headphones pieced out. But he said, "Oh, well, in the city of Dallas, you could probably put 12 franchises." And I was like, "No way. There's no way we're ever going to be able to do that." And then now we have, I believe, 4. Right now we have 4. And so territory is huge. So that was something that me going into it really did not understand. So if I did not have that advisor who had that strong experience, not just they said that they could advise me, but he really had 40 years of experience and understood that, to Shirin's point, the franchise disclosure document it's a big, scary document. It's about 80 pages, depending on your system size. So it's this big, scary document. And for me, who I just want to, do marketing and branding and, teach dance choreography and inspire women, you got to have someone who really understands the ins and outs of that franchise disclosure document. And for those on the that are on the call that may be interested, there's a great website called fddexchange.com, and you can get free FDDs on there. And so that is a great place to go and look at the FDDs of different franchise systems, so you can kind of start to learn the lingo. You can understand what things mean. What it'll help you, to Shirin's point, like do your homework and understand what questions to ask. Because the biggest thing for me getting into franchising was I did not know what I did not know. So I just, it was new to me. I'd been in the music business for 17 years prior. So I did not know. I was an expert on DivaDance, but I was not an expert on franchising. So get yourself a great advisor who can coach you through that and read every document, even if it makes your eyes glaze over. Read everything.
Yes, yes, and yes. Adenah, similar question over to you as far as things that were unexpected, but also what was maybe the learning curve for you as a franchisee when coming in? Of course, you had IHOP as a franchisor, as a resource, but what was the learning curve like, and was there anything unexpected? Adenah, I think you just have to pop off of mute. There you go.
I think for me, one of the things that was a shocker, I didn't see this coming, was how difficult was it for me to have access to capital. I think, you read a lot of statistics about how difficult it is for women, particularly women of color, to have access to capital. I never thought that sort of applied to me in a sense. When I sort of went into my IHOP franchise, I were a high net worth person. I had good liquidity. I had good assets, but 7 banks said no to me. 7 banks said no to me on the hospice of, you didn't have experience. And statistics show that almost 40% of women of color fund their businesses with money out of their own pocket. They either don't have access to bank loans, they don't have access to venture capital money, they don't have access to private equity money. So living through that and the stress it kind of put on me, when I opened my very first IHOP, I was essentially bankrupt by the time my door opened. I had to liquidate all of my savings. I had to take all of the equity out of every property that I ever owned. I literally, I finally got a bank that financed me through the influence of IHOP sort of coming in and advocating for me and say, we have this young woman that we believe in. Someone, they sort of put their muscle behind me. That's how I was able to finance my first IHOP. So for me, that was very disheartening and very discouraging. So when I read these statistics, and whenever people read statistics about how difficult it is for women of color to get finances and get access to capital, just having lived through that was something I would never forget. And if I can help it, I always let women know that when you're going into this, these are some of the challenges that you're going to face. You are going to definitely face these challenges. And I think this is something I'm passionate about, and I bring light to it whenever I can.
Ali, I'd love to add something to that if I could. In terms of that, I agree with Adenah. Folks come into, I encounter women who are amazing prospects, but they may not financially have the liquid capital to start the business. One thing that we do, we're still a small organization, but we offer in-house financing. So for some of those gals that may come in and they have some cash to start their business, but they don't have all of it. If they're a great prospect, I want the person. I don't want just their wallets, right? I want the right women in my business. So we offer in-house financing where I will let them do a promissory note with our corporate organization and let them pay us over time. So that has allowed me to partner with some great women who otherwise may not have been able to get into the business.
Fantastic. Thank you for adding that in. I want to pose this question to all three of you. you all mentioned some different resources and mentioned mentorship. If someone's thinking to themselves, I really want to learn more, and where can I go for resources, or who can I talk to? I would love to hear, who and where you all go to gain access to that information. Adenah, we can just start with you, and then Shirin, and then Jami.
I think for me, the best source of resource have really been staying close to the people that matters to me, and that's staying very close to the communities that I serve. I think sometimes we get so caught up into my mentor have to meet with me 5 or 6 times a week, a year. My mentor is Oprah Winfrey, and I'm sure she doesn't know she's my mentor, but she's been a mentor of mine for years, right? And I always seek out people. I always want to be a source of resources for people, right? I'm always interested in my gift. And I think I have this open door policy, and I would say this, reach out to me, go to my website, and I'm because I'm resourceful for other people, I can pick up the phone. I want to be able to pick up the phone. Jami, I'm gonna pick her brain. Hey, I'm going into this. What did you mean? Give me a little bit more insight on territory. Shirin, I will reach out, because I do believe that, especially women, we have this innate quality to support each other, right? We change the world. We have essentially had the power to change the world. You can see that by this election that just passed. We single-handedly changed the world. And I think when we bring our resources together, we are a force to be reckoned with. I kid you not.
Yes, absolutely. A force to be reckoned with is right. And I can't echo that enough. That's exactly what this summit is all about. I love it. I love it. Shirin, similarly, talk to us about resources. You are advising, mentoring businesses all the time, and you've been doing that for many years. So where could you point people to for resources to learn more?
I love what Adenah said. And by the way, I'm going to hang out with Adenah. Next, I'll be out there. We're going to have pancakes together soon. Growing up through the ranks, I was in the world of finance, in the world of franchising, in the world of home improvement. Not a lot of women where I lived. And actually, when I did a panel discussion a couple of years ago with a group of women CEOs, our moderator said, that only 3% of private equity-backed companies in the United States are run by women. And of course, I'm a subset of the women because I'm also immigrant and brown. So it's kind of like a rounding error. So I didn't really have a lot of mentors. I didn't really have anybody that looked like me that I could say, well, they've done it, I can do the same. But reality is, as long as I knew I was going to do the right thing, I was going to do good work, I used the resources that were available to me. And there are still a lot of resources out there. Cast a wide net, people that you know that may be out there in other businesses, but also in franchising. Reach out to organizations that give you freebies. Like Jami was saying, you have the FDD Exchange, you have IFA, you have places where you can go where you can get some good information that are free to you. Do look up to and ask people that you know that do run their own businesses. Be a student of how people do things, but ultimately also have confidence in knowing this. You can do it. Just know that you can do it. None of us have any magic. I haven't done anything spectacular other than I put one foot in front of another, and I believed that I expected that I was going to be that person, that I was no different. If anybody else was going to be a CEO, I was going to be a CEO. Why wouldn't I be the CEO? It's the same thing for all the rest of us. And as well, the panel that you see here, we're here because we're passionate in helping you. So I'm happy to assist in any way I can. I'm happy to learn from you. Bottom line is, go on knowing that you too can do it.
You can do it. Maybe that's the name of our next summit, is just you can do it. Jami, would love to hear about resources. I know you worked closely with Chuck, and would love to hear where else you go to for resources as a franchiser.
Well, one great thing I love about the franchising industry is that it's not competitive. I came from the music industry that's very competitive, and executives are kind of competing for the shine. Artists are kind of competing for awareness and visibility, and new artists are hungry to like get in there. But franchising is not competitive. It's not. People aren't trying to tear you down. And I go to conferences like IFA, and there's a great conference called Springboard for emerging franchisors. And there's a lot of folks at that conference who are thinking about franchising their concept as well. That conference is great, called Springboard. And I think they'll be back this year in person. Everyone you talk to, like, they want to help you. They want to answer your questions. It's not secretive. People aren't keeping things too close in their, to their vest. They really they're generous with information, but you have to ask the right questions. So, go in there prepared, find the people that you want to seek out, those people that you want to be your mentor, especially women. There's, majority of men in franchising, especially at the corporate level, but there's some badass ladies too. There's a handful of gals that I love, and I just sought them out, and I ask them questions, and I follow them on Instagram, and I comment on their things, and they have, really, they cheer me on. And I only would have created those relationships if I would not have created those relationships if I had not put myself out there to those folks, and been confident and asked them good questions about how they got where they are. So asking great questions and putting yourself in the right places.
We have about less than 10 minutes left, so I'm going to switch over to audience Q&A. We have a question here from Rebecca. What advice do you have for brick and mortar, smaller local businesses when it comes to growing and opening up other locations? Shirin, I'd love to start with you there.
So the question is, if it's a smaller local business, how do you expand?
Exactly.
Okay. Get to know your own fundamentals very, very, very well. How do you generate a lead? What's a lead? How do you close it? What is your pitch in closing it? What is it that you're ultimately providing in the way of product and service? What makes you differentiated? What makes you better? Because there's something about you that's unique. Package all of that to the extent that you can, so that you can train someone else, and then decide what the next place is for you to go, what makes the best sense. It's always best to expand to an area that you personally understand. Early on, you're going to be very close to the next franchise and the next franchise. When you're systematized and when you have many more, then you can expand beyond. But go where you know, but know your fundamentals inside and out.
What about you, Adenah? Anything to add on that? I know you're basically in the process of doing that yourself outside of being a franchisee. So anything to add there?
I think I couldn't agree more. What Shirin says is you have to go where you know. Start with your strength. I'd say there's a small business. Lead with your strength. It's an actual good book. Actually, I want to give people some books here that are just sort of starting out. A book I've read recently has been very impactful is Profit First. Every year I read The Alchemist. I think that, it has grounded me. I love The Alchemist. And lead with your strength. I think we live in a society right now where everything is so glossy, it's so instant. Everyone is trying to be that it girl that stay in your lane. It makes no sense to be expanding if these stores are not profitable. I tell people all the time, sometimes expansion can be a smoking mirror for things just not going well. So I say this to you, focus on building profitable stores, knowing your bottom line. I don't care. You can have 2 or 3 IHOP that can be spitting out just as much money as someone that have 10 IHOP, right? Growth doesn't always have to be your strategy. I think profitability should be your strategy. So if you're doing good profit in that store, can you really duplicate that same magic in your next location? It's been 15 years. I have 4 IHOP. Do the math. I'm in no rush. But what I am in a rush is to run really good profit centers and be a real amazing resource for my community. So I don't think sometimes in a big rush to expansion.
I love that. Take the time, look at profitability. I love those book mentions. I'm sure people are writing that down, and I think we're going to throw that in the chat as well for attendees. We're getting a ton of questions about time management, when to say yes and no to certain projects, and just work-life, personal balance. Jami, I'd like to start with you. Jami is a new mom, and it's also almost Jami's birthday as well, coming up next week, putting the spotlight on you. So would love to hear from you. Time management, work-life balance, how do you manage it all? And when do you say no to certain projects? How do you decide?
Well, it's tough when you love what you do. It's hard to stop doing it. And I just took maternity leave, sort of, because I love what I do. And so it's really tough because I don't think of it as work. So for me, it's not about work-life balance. It's about when I'm doing things that are not DivaDance, how present am I in those moments? That's critical for me. So it's not so much like the balance, but it's more about when I am with my daughter, am I present? And when I am with my mom and dad, who I'm grateful to still have them, am I present and not multitasking, working in my business also, and I'm with my husband over at dinner, like really trying to be present. So it's not so much of a like, well, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do this and this time and this and this time. It's really about when I devote myself to my personal life, am I fully there? So, and that's something, definitely I would advise anybody to do and not stress out about having to have this rigid balance. It's about, are you there present fully for the people you love?
Absolutely. And it doesn't feel like work if you're doing what you love. DivaDance slogan, do more of what you love. So it makes total sense. Shirin, over to you. Work-life balance, project management, and when to say no to certain things.
I'm so passionate about this topic. As soon as you say it, I go, yes. First of all, work-life balance. You'll hear this. I apply this to business and I apply this to life. You have got to have guiding principles. You've got to have your core values. For me, I have 2 grown children now, and one of them, we actually started a business together a year ago, and we're doing really, really well, knock on wood. I always knew that I was going to be not a working mother, but a mother who happened to work. What that means is that my guide was, I was going to be an engaged mother. So my life revolves around making sure that I take care of those that matter to me in my personal life. And as well, I'm passionate about what I do. And the two can live together. To Jami's point, you just have to be mindful and not be so strict. Talk about those saying no. I think saying no is a very important thing to remember in life. Whether you're running a business, whether you're managing a project, whether you're running your life, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a franchise owner, you win more things in life by learning to say no than to say yes. The reason is this: when you have a vision, a path that you want to get to, there will be many distractions that come your way. So many shiny objects, so many things that you kind of want to do, even within the context of a business or a project. But if you veer off every minute, you'll never get to your destination. So some of the most respectable business owners in this country have always said, learn to say no. There is a reason for that, because you have to bounce everything off your vision, your core values. And if it doesn't fit it, it's not for you. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not for you. So really passionate about that.
Adenah, I'm going to send it over to you to wrap us up with that same question of work-life balance, saying no. Shirin, I love what you were saying. It really made me think when you said that saying no will actually teach you more. I think that's really powerful. It's something I can honestly incorporate. Adenah, I will send it over to you as we wrap up the next 2 minutes.
I think no is a full sentence. No. Whenever you say yes to something, always remember you're saying no to something else, right? As a mother with 2 young children, I have an 8-year-old, I have a 10-year-old, I have a partner with me. I am busy. So I'm very careful about the things I say yes to, because when you're passion driven, like I am extremely passion driven. I don't know 50%. I know 1 to 100. I have 1 speed. So when I fully engage in something, I am fully engaged, right? And I think what this pandemic was able to teach all of us is we all went into timeout at the same time. We all learned a new way of doing business all the same. So I think it's very important as business leader, and especially women leader, that we stop telling young girls that they have to be everything to everyone. We send this really horrible message to young women that, you know, you have to be this perfect mom. You can't have it all. When I'm sitting at a 7 o'clock meeting, I'm missing something. I'm missing dinner with my kids. There's a sacrifice. There is an exchange. And always remember that. And it's all about balancing it. I would not be a good mother if I did not work. I would not. I need this job. It feeds me. I feast off of it. It allows me to be a great mom.
It's so tough with virtual events. I just want to hear the crowd roar over the three of you. Thank you so much. You had so much wisdom, so much inspiration, and we're so grateful for your time today. So thank you for taking the time. I'm going to invite you ladies off stage. You can pop your cameras off, and please feel free, of course, to join us throughout the rest of the day. But thank you again.